Today we're going to talk about both filming and photographing the eclipse. I feel like a lot of people are talking about the eclipse. Everyone's excited. I know I'm excited.
I think it's hard enough just to look at the eclipse.
Why do you say that?
Like, we're talking about photographing the eclipse. It's this hard to even view the eclipse.
Are you talking about the fact that we're blind right now, both of us?
Yes.
That you can't wear these glasses inside? Because you can't.
How can you possibly see anything?
Can't even see the light in the room.
Yeah.
I was gonna, these are quite intense. There are the paper kind, the classic papery, real cheap Eclipse glasses. But then there's a little bit more expensive kind of plastic Eclipse glasses. These guys, same kind of effect. You can't see anything, but these aren't even that much better.
Ooh, but this is easily 10 times better than the paper ones.
You think you're getting that, but I noticed right away the what do you call these? The arms?
Yes. Yeah.
They don't stay nested. This particular brand, and I imagine most of them, they're all basically the same.
You were showing me that. Yours wasn't
The
really
arm
built.
just breaks off. Just completely fell apart the first time I put them on. So even if you think you're buying the plastic sturdy ones, they're not actually that sturdy. You gotta be very gentle, very delicate.
At least these offer a little bit more protection as far as you can see that it kind of overlaps a little, so it protects
your peripheral
rays, from coming in.
Which these ones,
the paper kind, there's not much protection going on there.
I can't get them on with the headphones. These ones, the paper ones, are kind of nice because you can look underneath a little bit. You have peripheral. The plastic ones, it depends on your preference. What do you want? Do you want to be fully blacked out so you can look at it, or do you want to be able to kind of see around? Well, these ones, I guess I can kind of see.
Well, how much are these? What is this industry of
you can
making
get those
glasses for the Eclipse?
You can get those for free at a few places. I think some LensCraft eyeglass type places, you can pick them up for free. So but you can get a whole pack.
This is a website. I don't know if I'm sure there's other content on their website talking about the Eclipse.
The Eclipse,
Maybe, yeah.
Everyone's talking about the Eclipse. These would be good if you want to try and take a picture with your phone, maybe. You hold the glasses in front.
Put this right in front of your lens.
And get a really
Are you saying that that's the best way to take a
No.
photo of the Eclipse with your phone?
I'm saying you could give it a shot.
You can give it a shot. What's that? The Galaxy phone? Samsung got busted for telling people, oh yeah, you could just take a photo of the moon, and people thought they were legitimately taking a photo of the moon, like a high resolution photo of the moon, but it turned out that no, it was just fake, like you weren't actually taking a photo of the moon.
But wait, so like the phone, you'd point it at the moon, you'd take a picture, and it would give you like a composite, like a pre-rendered
it was a fake moon. Yeah, so somebody proved it by having a blurry photo of the moon. It was a photo already of the moon blurry, and they put their phone to that, and it made it look like a perfect moon with the craters and everything. Yeah, so it faked a lot of people out.
You think you're getting a nice photo, and it's just a pre-rendered. Well, that's the thing about the moon. You only see the one side, so it'd be easy to fake and trick people.
Right, exactly, yeah.
That's a good way to debunk it, though. I like that, taking the picture of the picture.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because you say that, like, oh, it's only one, you only ever see the one side of the moon, which is what a lot of, like, flat earth people would say.
Sure, the conspiracy side of things.
But on the flip side, you just, like, almost flipped it completely for, like, I don't know. It's like, well, you can only see the eclipse with these. It's like you can only do... No?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I feel like... Well, it's every 4 years, correct, for the eclipse?
I don't know if it's exactly every 4 years. It depends on the region you're in. So there was an eclipse just last year here, but it wasn't a national kind of thing where it was a bigger deal.
There was an eclipse last year?
Yeah, here,
regionally. How often do they have eclipses?
Every once in a while, but it depends on where you're at. Sometimes they're in Canada, sometimes they're in Texas.
They can only happen in certain regions, or you have a better
depending
full
on
eclipse.
The time of day, depending on your latitude and longitude and all these things, you can sometimes see
a total eclipse. You're talking about a total eclipse?
It might have been partial. Okay. I just know that a year ago, my kids got these glasses and looked at the sun because an eclipse was happening.
Eclipsed completely.
It was... maybe not total, but it was happening. The moon was passing in front of the sun.
I know there's like partial eclipses, but I don't know how often are the total eclipses.
I don't know if it's a regular interval or not. The last one, you took a picture of it in 2017? Was that the year?
Was that almost... How many years ago was that?
Oh gosh, 7?
7 years.
7 years ago?
Which I was able to take a pretty good photo of the eclipse, I would say.
How did you do it back then?
With ND filters, a lot of ND filters.
You used multiple ND filters.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Like I had to, and then my f-stop was pretty high as well.
Okay.
But
So I was looking this up because I want to do, I want to take a picture, and will probably do a video of the Eclipse as well. And with video, you don't have the shutter speed control that you have with photography. So you need an even stronger ND. And I was looking them up, and they sell 1 million ND. It's 20 stops.
now, what are you trying to do exactly? Are you trying
Just
to
have
like
fun.
expose for the sun?
I will see. I will only know when I know.
No, I'm saying like when they sell that ND filter, do they have like
Oh,
an example photo with
the
it?
Eclipse.
It's like like you've
It's
exposed
for the sun.
for
Yes,
the sun.
correct.
Like we're getting an accurate, I don't know, color of the sun at that point.
Yeah, they have ND 100,000, which is I think 16 stops, maybe plus or minus, and then they have ND 1 million. And you know how the ND numbers kind of jump?
Yes.
They're almost like exponential. I don't know exactly what the curve is, but you go from ND 4 to ND 8, and then you've got 16,
64,000.
64,000. Yeah, and there's various, and depending on the brand, sometimes they label them different. Sometimes they're labeled in stops, which I actually find more helpful. But it is cool to say, oh, I shot that with ND 1 million. It's a good.
So if you have ND 1000 and stack another 1000 on it,
Oh, what would that be? I don't know. What's 1,000? So if 100,000 is 16 stops, is 1,000 8
what's a million?
stops? A million is 20 stops.
like is that? Oh, they say
They
how
say
many stops?
20
Okay,
stops.
20
Yeah.
stops.
Which is the thing you're trying to balance, right? With photography, you want to avoid things like diffraction. So I don't know when you shot the Eclipse years ago,
probably-
if you were shooting f/22.
Well, it's probably a good thing to know before you even look at the sun, because they say you can ruin your sensor by pointing your camera directly at the sun just in general.
Maybe.
I could see how, like, yes and no, right? Because like a magnifying glass, for instance, it's like you can have a magnifying glass, right, and shine it with the sun, but it's at a certain point it becomes dangerous. So I'm assuming that's exactly what's happening. But like, at what level are you coated enough to protect your sensor from that magnification?
I would be very careful depending on the lens you're using, because a magnifying glass focuses the light rays into a small point. If you do that, you're burning ants or whatever you do as a
Right.
little kid. I think a similar effect could happen depending on the lens you're using, and you could burn your sensor. This happens with a similar effect, not identical, but it's not burning as much as it is destroying the pixels. But with lasers at EDM shows,
Yes.
concerts,
Yes.
a lot of people burn out their sensor.
yeah.
Burn, quote.
It scares me every time I shoot one of those.
They're shooting laser beams all around.
I feel like James Bond. I'm like,
or what's that scene? Is that movie Entrapment?
what was that? Mission Impossible maybe is the better.
Okay. Does he go through lasers in Mission Impossible?
Yeah. I think Mission Impossible, yeah, not 007.
They
007
definitely
doesn't
do
that.
it in Ocean's 12. He does the laser dance. And then I think there's an old movie, Entrapment, where they also do that kind of going under the lasers. And then I think Mr.
Just
Beast
blow
has even done
smoke.
that. Yeah. So you can see the lasers.
Take a puff of a cigarette. and
The
blow
makeup
smoke.
kit. You pop open the cover girl and it's the makeup
I was
dust.
going
Also
with a
shows you.
cigarette.
That would work too. There's lots of ways to put particulate into the air.
My fog machine. I mean, filmmakers have been doing it for years to see light rays, not
Yes.
necessarily.
So yes, I would be careful pointing your camera at the sun. It's not guaranteed that it's going to do any damage, but it would be smart, I think, to put some kind of ND filter in front of it that's going to help you out.
Well,
Well, the strength of that ND filter matters depending on how you're going about it.
What was that article? That article you were reading right before the podcast. It made me laugh because they were saying like you could damage like your eyes looking at the sun.
Looking at your camera.
Yeah. But like, how old was that article written?
don't
Because
know.
I'm pretty sure
It's a copy and
like,
paste.
That was if like it was a mirror box,
A
Like, if you
DSLR,
were-
yes.
If you were literally
looking at the sun.
I'm like, that would never happen. Like, you're looking at an LCD screen
Nowadays
on
with
a
mirrorless, yeah, you got your EVF, you got your LCD,
Yeah.
which we've talked about, filming welding.
welding. Yep.
Don't look at welding light with your bare eyes.
No.
But if it's a
Through your
camera,
camera,
totally
you're
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Protection.
ND filters, I did order the 100,000 and the million. I'm going to
What's
test both.
100,000?
That's the 16 stops.
That's. I thought you said. Oh, in 20 stops
is a million,
Okay.
yes. Because that's the numbers get bigger, but the effect is not as significant.
Right.
Right. The difference between 100,000 and a million sounds like a big deal.
Yeah.
But then it's 16
it's
stops
not.
at 20 stops. So test them both out and then try and keep my aperture around like a 5.6, maybe f8, depending on what I have to do. Because I don't want to shoot too shallow and have nothing in focus. And,
Yes.
And I don't want to shoot at like f22 or even f16.
I don't think it would.
Because then you run into issues with diffraction.
Focus. Yeah. Well, that's if you, yeah. Well, are you trying to shoot it? Nobody's trying to shoot a Eclipse at f2.8 or 1.4 or anything. That'd be
right.
ridiculous.
What's the point?
Well, a lot of people say, depending on the lens, they say, "Oh, this is really good for astrophotography because it's so fast."
Correct.
But
the
at a
opposite.
certain point, you're like, "Well, you don't want it too fast because usually lenses aren't sharp like the fastest."
Correct.
Right. So, like maybe you get a really fast lens in order to stop it down. Maybe.
Yeah. My sweet spot for me on micro four thirds tends to be f4, which I am going to do micro four thirds because we've talked about the benefit being
you get the telephoto.
shoot further. So I'll have to grab that 50 to 200.
Which I think that's how I shot the Eclipse last time.
Probably.
Yeah. Because I shot that with a dummy adapter and a 70 to 200, a Canon, an EF mount.
Which would be like a 400 equivalent full frame, right? So having the longer reach.
And then I think I had a 2x adapter on
Extension?
it, which also like made my my f-stop even greater at that point.
Yeah, you can shoot really long and really lightweight with micro four thirds, getting that close up that you want. And I'm going to try and do both video and photo because we're talking about photo, which you have the control of shutter speed, but with video, it's got.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick to my shutter angle.
Wait, what did I have then? It was a 200 times 2 times 2.
Correct. Well, full frame equivalent. Yes.
Yes, full frame equivalent.
But you didn't have 2x
No,
extender.
I wish. That'd be awesome.
So there's lots of cool ways to do it. And I'm trying to think other tips and tricks would be ISO low, obviously. There's no reason to keep your ISO high.
No.
And I think when I'm taking pictures, I'll just have my shutter speed high, but not too high.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs
Well,
to be
you know, the funny
excessive.
thing,
It's just going to
though-
be controlling my exposure.
Yeah, the funny thing about being so close to the sun, like photographing it, if you're so close, and like I don't know how many people have shot the moon, for instance, it travels pretty quickly. Like when you're zoomed up,
The
on
moon
it,
does, yeah.
The moon travels very quickly. So yeah, how fast the sun is not so fast. I guess.
Well, I don't know. I guess I've never really pointed my camera at the sun to
Right,
track
yeah.
how fast it moves.
The moon cruises. If you
Yeah.
fill up a frame with a moon, it's gone. It just you realize how fast we are moving when you try to look at the moon, at least.
Well, the moon is moving and we are moving. We're spinning and the moon is spinning. I think the sun moves slower. It must.
The sun doesn't move at all, man.
In the sky.
Yeah.
A sunset goes pretty quick. A sunrise goes pretty quick.
That is true. Yeah.
Someone's out there pulling their hair out screaming, like, you fools!
I hope.
Well, the Earth's rotation is constant. That doesn't change. But the fact that the moon is closer and is also moving around us, I think means it moves faster
Right. It
than the
has to.
sun moves through the sky.
Yeah.
I think. But I haven't put this to the test.
Well,
We're going to find out come Eclipse Day. April 8th
April 8th.
is the big day.
So where's the best place in the U.S. to see the eclipse?
They have some maps because it's charts and at different times of the day, depending on where you're at. It's all very region and location specific.
Right.
So you have to almost say, well, where for me, because
Yeah.
it applies to
would
one
you
person.
travel to see it because you know when it's going to be? So
I
why
will
wouldn't
not
you just
be.
go?
I'm just going to look. I'm going to look in my backyard and I'm going to look up at the sun and go.
But that's why I
is it
asked,
happening?
Like, where is the best place to see it? Because if it only really happens every now and then, you say like, it happened last year. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize it happened last year.
Maybe a
Here.
partial. Yes,
Yeah,
there was
partial,
a one. But no, I don't know exactly the optimal perfect place. You could probably look it up and someone will tell you, and then it'll depend again on the time of the day and all that kind of stuff.
But here we can see a total eclipse at what time?
Ooh,
Or
I
when
don't
are you
know
expecting to
specifically
see
in,
it?
in Arizona. I have to look that
Okay.
up on the day. I think it's in midday because I think the kids are going to be in school. So that was a thing too. We were like,
that's
well,
cool.
the kids will watch it. And it's like, but they're in
The whole
class.
school. Why wouldn't you watch it as a whole school?
But then you have to have glasses for the whole school.
Why wouldn't the company that gives you free glasses wouldn't be like, listen, every school should get these?
Yeah, let's all go outside and look at it. Now, here's the twist.
It would be terrible marketing if they didn't do it.
Yeah. It is a bit, if a school, I hope the school does it. I don't know.
All right.
Here's the twist, though. Well, let's say we've been having some rain. It's been a little cloudy. What if we have like a storm? Everyone's like so excited.
It was raining all day yesterday.
Yeah.
That was insane.
It's a little crazy, the weather this time of year.
I didn't think that was even a possibility in Arizona for it to rain all day.
Yeah. And last night it was pretty stormy too. So we'll see if the weather holds and what happens. If it's cloudy, then
We'll see.
I got some glasses for nothing. And I'm going to be taking pictures of fog.
Yeah, what can you otherwise use these glasses for?
That is a good question. I have no idea.
Just looking at the sun?
I'm just on casual.
Just casual.
That was my kids. I got these glasses and said, here, these are for the eclipse. And they immediately like looked at
Well,
the
you gotta
sun.
put it on,
And they said, Dad, what's that yellow thing? That yellow thing in the sky? And I'm like, the sun?
So it is yellow. Okay.
And they're like, no, the yellow circle in the sky. What's the yellow circle? I'm like, guys, that's the sun.
Right.
But the tint on these is so strong, it doesn't look like the sun.
Right. That's what I was asking earlier. I was like, so like it looks what? Like what? You're right.
Yeah. And then they asked me, well, what does the moon look like? And I don't know how to answer these questions for these kids. Like, the moon looks like the moon. What do you mean? Well, no, but Dad, what does the moon look like? And I think they were asking, like, what does it look like through these? Which, look, it broke again. These things are terrible.
Well, you can look at the moon without glasses.
Correct. And if you look at the moon with these, you're going to see
won't be able
nothing.
to see it at all.
But I didn't know how to answer their question. What does the moon look like? What do you mean, what does the moon look like? You've seen it.
Isn't that wild, though? Like, how dark is the moon in order to be reflecting the sun back to us and we can see detail on the moon?
But it is still bright.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, moon has light, obviously, like, it projects light back onto us. But it's like, all right, what color is the moon then, right? If it's being blasted by the sun and it looks like overexposed, maybe, enough to emit light.
Oh, you're looking for like a lux value? What's
Right,
the lux of the sun? What's
right,
the lux of the moon? I don't know. The moon is always brighter than I expect it to be. When I look at it, I always have to squint a little bit. My eyes have to adjust. You can't
that
just
weird?
look at the moon and see it. At first you go, oh, that's kind of bright.
But you can see, like, detail if you look at the moon.
Yeah, but your eyes
like,
have to, they,
Well, even in daytime, that's what messes with, like, my mind. Like, because during the day you can see the moon sometimes, and you're just like, but it looks like really blue. It almost like fades into the sky. But at night, obviously, it's just, like an off-white, maybe eggshell.
Yeah.
Is it eggshell? What color? That's why I asked. What color is the moon really?
lunar. I don't know.
It's lunar.
Yeah, it's lunar. No, the moon definitely moves very quickly through the sky.
And you've photographed the moon, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everyone at some
That's a
point
fun
does
thing
it.
to do,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fun.
because you immediately try and take a picture with your phone, and it turns out terrible. Nope. Because the moon looks really cool
Unless you
some
have a
nights.
Samsung,
Fakes it.
it'll look great.
Sometimes the
really
moon looks really cool when it's on the horizon. If it's coming up, it's a full moon. It's big.
I like
and
the
kind of
the
yellow.
crescent moons.
Oh, you
Like
prefer the crescent?
Well, like if it's a thin sliver, I think that just looks really cool because like that's the iconic moon. I think.
Oh no, I disagree.
An iconic moon is not a circle with craters. The iconic moon is like a crescent moon,
Okay.
right?
The shape of moon shape is crescent. Yes.
Yeah. Like no one's like, oh yeah, like I'm
circle.
gonna send you an emoji of the moon, and it's just like a planet. And you're like,
They do have that emoji. That's the full moon.
I know. It's a sad face.
Don't
He's
use
like, I think it's a happy face.
I like the moon when it's rising up and it's nice and big and yellow, and then you want to go take a picture with your phone, and it turns out terrible, and then you immediately start down the path of, okay, how do I get the shot of the moon that looks as good as it looks to my eyes? And that takes you down a whole rabbit hole of, okay, now I got to find some gyroscopic tracker and get into astrophotography. I don't want star trails, so I need to buy this $1,000 device to track the movement of the planet with the stars.
Do you have Photo Pills, the app?
No, I don't.
Oh my goodness. Everyone pause what you're doing right now. If you're a photographer, videographer, download the app Photo Pills. It allows you to track the sun, the moon, a lot of other things, but in augmented reality. So it helps. It's a ton. It's like my favorite go-to tool, figuring out where the sun is exactly going to be. So
To set up a shot.
To set up a shot, to set up, I don't know, a lot of times, like if you're like blocking out windows, if you're hanging a whole bunch of like duvetine or whatever, just to make sure like you can see where the sun is going to be throughout the day, so you know exactly what you'll need. It's one of the best tools ever.
You told everyone to go download it, so that's what I'm doing. Oh, it's $11.
It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm telling you right now, it is worth it.
Everyone's gonna
Okay, so
$11.
here's photo pills.
All right,
and
I'm doing it.
And what happens is, all right, let's go to the sun right here, and then at the bottom, and it tells you a whole bunch of other information as well. But let's go to augmented reality, and as it loads up right now, you can kind of see and track
The position of planets and stars and
so
the
here,
moon.
You kind of look around with it, and it
Okay.
tells you like where the sun is.
It tells me where north is.
Yep.
I see that. I don't. Oh! It's way up there.
Yeah,
Something's up there.
and it allows you to see like when exactly, like if there's a mountain range in the distance, if there's buildings, if you want like a cool shot of the sun in between buildings, maybe if you're shooting like a telephoto like down, like at least that's what I like to do. I like to make the sun or moon look very big. So if you shoot telephoto, and depending on what you have in the foreground, you could make the moon or sun or whatever look substantially larger.
Those shots are always really cool when you
yeah.
see the giant. Well, that's actually a
I have
really
one
good
on my
app.
Instagram that like I love, and it makes the moon look, God, like 20 times bigger than it actually is.
That's a good app. I'm going to use that photo pills because I should be able to track the path of the sun and the moon and where they cross.
Yeah, you'll be
That's
able to
where
see
I'll
where
point
the,
my camera.
Yeah, you'll see what the eclipse is going to be.
That's perfect. Good advice, David. Worth the $11.
Dude, I'm telling you, that's my favorite. Ooh, here's a photo of the moon.
Favorite app for doing any kind of cosmic.
Yeah, the moon. I was tracking the.
So you set that shot up first, let it get in position, and then took the shot.
Well, it's a good thing to know, like when. It's kind of funny because like you never really pay attention to like where the moon or sun is, like right throughout the year it'll change, right? So it's like, oh yeah, that's the track that it'll be on. Okay, so it gives you a good sense of when to do certain shots. Like I had to do like a skyline shot once, and I told the client, I was like, let's do it at this time of year because you wouldn't get the result that you want this time of year. So it helps, and a lot, like I said, a lot of people don't think about it. I didn't used to think about it until I downloaded that app.
Probably just as almost maybe equally as valuable as tracking the weather.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's like a huge crescent of this moon during the eclipse.
That was
Or the
2017.
sun, a crescent sun? Is that what it's called? The crescent sun during the eclipse?
Yeah.
Can you say that?
Sure.
Do people say that?
Well, I think it's good to track those movements, especially if you're worried about lighting or you're trying to line something up, just like you would track the weather and see what's the forecast say. What is it, a solar forecast? What do you call that?
Sure.
You're forecasting something. So I'm going to use that app, Photo Pills.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Why is it called Photo Pills?
I don't know. No idea.
That sounds, I don't know.
But it's also like a lot of other photo helpful tips, depth of field.
Some kind
Excuse me,
of
burped.
exposure
but yeah.
calculator.
But also the moon as well. It'll tell you like when the moon rise is going to be, basically anything you would ever want to know about sun, moon, stars.
Cool. I will definitely be using that. Any other tips for photographing or filming the eclipse? Are you going to be trying to take a shot?
Maybe, when did you say it was? Midday?
April 8th.
But midday?
I think so. Let me look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I have the technology. I have enough ND filters, I think, because I've done it before.
Well, so that's why I was trying to avoid stacking ND filters.
Well, I think
Because I don't particularly like that. I get too much
'Cause maybe that's the
flaring and
difference
ghosting
then.
and extra
because
nonsense.
if you're trying to take a picture with it full frame, would that be like you have more light coming into your camera, right? As opposed to a micro four thirds?
You could look at it that way.
Right? Because if you're using a extender or whatever it is, it's like theoretically it'll be darker than a full frame camera, right? So it's like, but how much? It's like
It won't be darker.
it won't be.
No, because all of your settings are the same between the two. Exposure is exposure.
But when it comes to like because you're talking about shooting like lower ISO, obviously, it's interesting to think whenever I think about like doubling anything, it's like, do I use a micro four thirds on purpose? Because I know that like I don't have to.
So there's a lot of argument and debate over that because some people will say that any extension benefit you're getting from reach from Micro Four Thirds is offset by, you know, potential resolution or quality gains you would get using full frame. I think it's really depends on the person and their individual ability to kind of do the job, and what specific equipment are they using, what techniques are they using. Because I would say that in general, definitely for video, you're going to get better long range footage, again, just video, from Micro Four Thirds.
Because in my mind, whenever I think of like Micro Four Thirds, I think of how much light I will need, because I can't risk like adding ISO. Because on Micro Four Thirds, like that's the last thing you want to do. Because who made that video that was breaking down like if you're looking at a full frame like equivalency of, and compared directly to a Micro Four Thirds, shooting like your ISO and grain pattern, like shooting at like a 200 ISO on a Micro Four Thirds is the equivalent of like looking at like an 800 ISO on a full frame. So you know when to push like your ISO until it's like not good enough, right? It's like once it starts to become really noisy. But on a full frame, you have much more latitude before you start going into like Grainsville, right? Because you have, like, you can shoot 100, 200, 300, 400 before you get to 800. But on a Micro Four Thirds, you're starting at 200, but it looks like the equivalency of like a full frame at an 800.
Yeah, you're
so
talking
like
about Tony Northrup made that video years and years ago.
But it definitely does, like, it makes sense, right? It's like if you look at like Micro Four Thirds, like even photos, like the grain is much more noticeable, much more quickly than a full frame. And I don't know if that's just the camera itself and how it like renders the photo so that it does look cleaner. But like on my full frame cameras, at least, everything looks cleaner at equivalent ISOs, or not, like less than equivalent. So
Well,
like
so
if I'm shooting low ISO on my full frame, it looks cleaner than shooting like even low ISOs on my Micro Four Thirds, like 200, 400 looks
So
noisy.
yes, that can be the case. However, there's so many variables that kind of confound that conclusion. So for example, 25 megapixels full frame versus 25 megapixels Micro Four Third. It's the same amount of photo sites, but on full frame, you're four times the actual real estate to put those pixels.
Right.
So they can be larger. Now, I don't know that they always are, but they probably are. So if you're comparing, in that case, right, a 25 megapixel Micro Four Third to 25 megapixel full frame, I think the conclusion you just outlined is true. However, there's plenty times where that larger surface area, a full frame sensor, if you put more resolution into it,
Right.
like something like the A7R3, which you said, you're like, oh yeah, you got to watch your ISO on that.
Oh my God.
Because it gets kind of grainy.
Immediately.
But that's the same equivalent, right? Because those photo sites are smaller.
Right.
And
So if I shot photos on my A7S3 with my 12 megapixels,
but then you lose resolution.
right.
So it's so many different variables, and picking out, saying, well, this is the case, that full frame is always cleaner. Well, yeah, yes and no, because also on that A7R 3 or 4 or 5, which they're up to now, you have more resolution. So if you shrink that down, now you're shrinking the size of the noise.
Yep.
And all of these things affect that final image.
Yeah, which ironically enough, you can easily just run through Lightroom and denoise, and denoise actually works really well, like their AI denoiser. But you can't do that with video.
Someone said to do that because that's the issue we've had with Vlog dynamic range boost on the Lumix GH6. Very particular set of circumstances
Yes.
here. That particular camera, dynamic range boost, only works in Vlog at ISO 2000. We've said that that's too noisy.
It's so noisy.
Someone said, well, just denoise it, and then you'll get the extra dynamic range. I have my thoughts of that solution, but I wondered, what was your gut reaction when I said that?
I was like, brother,
You could, if your ultimate goal is to have the maximum dynamic range and you're willing to go through the extra steps of post-production to denoise your footage,
That sounds.
you can do it.
I'd rather pay for a body that can actually do that,
Yeah, I think so too.
because then
Because I have to do it every time.
the workflow.
What am I
is gonna
running?
be
I have to
insane.
run every clip through Neat Video.
Absolutely not.
I mean, the denoising has gotten better. So I mean,
Neat Video does look good, but I'm thinking of like the processing time of doing how many
Everything.
Yeah, like all your whole like
just for
Like, what are you going to do?
an extra stop at dynamic range.
Oh, but just export your timeline. Once you're done editing, just export it at 444 and just denoise that. But that wouldn't even work. You would have to do each clip individually.
Yeah, I don't know. It's extra hoops to jump through, and I try and remove all the hoops. I've already done enough of that.
Right.
I did the video about the HVX 200 and all the hoops I used to have to jump through to shoot, with photography lenses on this camcorder style thing, and the P2 memory cards were like 4 gigabytes. It just was such it was the best at the time, but it was so tedious and all these things you had to consider. And then the moment the GH1 came around and you got true 1080p on an SD card in a tiny lightweight camera body, and everything was cheap and small and compact, and the image quality was better. Like, of course I stopped using camcorders. That's all we had before then. The DSLR revolution happened overnight with the 5D Mark II and the GH1.
The footage looked pretty good, though.
The D90
that you posted, by
of the HVX 200.
Yeah. I thought it looked on my phone
nice.
at least. I'm looking at my phone. I was like, that's 720p. That looks good.
Which is kind of the part of the point a little bit.
Right? Yeah. It's like if I'm looking at it at that scale, yes, it's fine. Because the upload resolution for most, like even Instagram is like 19 or it's HD, but depending on how you're cropping for what you're posting, like it could be smaller. Yeah.
And what the notorious Apple commercials, right? They're like shot on iPhone, but it's who's using the camera, what's the lighting, what accessories are they using to optimize the composition, what's the set look like, the actors, the hair and makeup, all that stuff. You can shoot amazing footage with an iPhone in the right hands in the right set of circumstances.
In their parameters with any camera.
Any
right?
camera.
It's like we talk about that a lot with the GH5 in a controlled environment, which that's all we ever use, mostly at least. I guess we do a lot of vlogs, but like in a controlled environment, any camera is going to perform its best. Every camera should look pretty equivalent.
And in an equally flip side of that equation, in an uncontrolled environment, the greatest camera can look like a potato.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You can buy the Red, you can buy the Venice, you can buy the Airy Alexa. You put it in the wrong hands in the wrong environment, and that footage will look like
that used to be
Garbaggio.
That used to be my favorite series. There was
Pro versus amateur. That one, is that the one you're talking about?
It was like pros using just like
the cheap
a Lego camera, right?
Yes.
It was like any camera.
Oh, but they didn't do the competition, because there are those ones where they have the amateur with the professional camera as well, and they kind of go head to head.
I've seen that. That is less interesting to me because I feel like that's obvious, right? But I do love to see a professional use a lower quality camera,
like the Barbie camera.
Yes. So like the one I know, at least, I don't know, it's like the Lego camera is like one that comes to mind. But it's really funny when you see it's like 1 megapixel or whatever it is. It's like, here, like take a photo with this, and you're like, okay. And then of course they'll come back with some creativity, because that's ultimately like what it is. It's like you're looking to capture light, especially if you're not, doing anything to shape it. You're just, out there in the world looking for it. But yeah, that's all it is. It's like, that's why people shoot at certain times of the day, because light is more interesting in the morning and the evening, because you get shadows.
Yeah, and that's what I was challenging myself to do with the HVX 200. It'd be very easy to make that camera look bad, because if you shoot like a camcorder, you're going to have that camcorder look.
Yeah.
Home video, classic. I was trying to push myself to what's the best I can get out of this camera. And now it's been, that camera's 19 years old, I think.
Jeez.
It would have been perfect if it had been 20, but 19. Just off by one. I don't know, just 20 is a nicer number.
I think 19 is a more clickable number. Yeah.
Maybe I'll change the title.
Yeah.
19 years later, knowing everything I know now compared to back then, because there's a lot of stuff I shot when I was young. I mean, I was probably, what year was that? I would have been not even, I can't do math on the fly as I'm talking. It's really hard.
You were in college?
No, before that.
Oh.
I must have been 15, 14, 16, something around there. I was 15, 16.
Using that camera for what?
For work.
I thought you were saying that was for like your student film.
I know. By the time I actually did my capstone, for film school, that was the GH1.
Oh yeah, the GH1.
Because everyone was buying the 7D and the 5D at that time.
I knew a lot of people with the 7D.
Yeah.
I borrowed the 7D a lot from some of my friends who had them.
Yeah, and the Canon ones were more expensive. And then the moment I saw that you could get a GH1 and hack it, and I think I paid $600 to get a GH1 from China. Because I was, I think, a little bit late to that whole
GH1?
thing. The
Oh,
GH1, yeah.
Maybe. It was 09.
Yeah, but that would have been 2011 that I did that. So it was like a year or two, maybe 2010, depending on the timeline. So for my capstone, I did GH1. But before that, it was all HVX 200 for a while, doing a ton of work with it. Like I started working probably when I was 14, I think, getting paid to do stuff. It was very corporate, a lot of live events.
Who allowed you to work at the age of 14?
I'm myself.
Isn't that illegal?
No, not
Is that not illegal?
I mean, no one was forcing me to. It wasn't a job. It was all freelance. It was all contractor stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which I do recommend. And a lot of it was volunteer too, because you busy yourself as a kid. You have all this time when you're young, and I filled it with working.
Nice.
And doing whatever I could to shoot and edit videos, movies, I thought at the time, like short films.
Yes. Yeah, I had a lot of school projects. I actually would tell my teachers, I would convince my teachers, because I didn't like oral presentations and stuff. And I was like, well, what if I made a video instead? And every one of them were like, do a video. That's cool. So that's what I did. And then I just play it in class.
Way better than writing a paper.
And then I would just sit back. Yep. But
yeah, the HVX 200, lots of hoops to jump through, but you can still make it look good as any camera. You can make look good and in the right set of circumstances, in the right hands. Yeah.
Well, you could make anything that looks good bad. Like, have you ever tried watching, let's watch something on YouTube that is 4K, but watch it at like 240p. It's like, does it still look good? Usually, right? Because it's like composition. You're still looking at color, lighting. It's like everything. Yeah, you can make any camera look good. You just need to.
It's not. The point is, it's not resolution.
Right.
The resolution is not what matters
resolution is like
most.
the least thing.
It's the actual substance of the frame, what's in the shot. So we'll see how this Eclipse goes. I'm hoping that it's not cloudy. I'm hoping that I get some good shots because I've never done it before. Never felt the need, and I still don't feel the need other than just for fun. Why not? It's a rare enough event.
Okay. ND a million.
ND 1 million.
When does that come in?
Thursday.
I want to see what it looks like. Wonder if it's like, who makes it?
KNF.
Okay. So I'm assuming it's like purposefully made for the sun. Is it the only one, or do they have stronger?
They have 1 million is the highest it goes from their line. Maybe there's further.
Then you could just stack another million on top
You
of it.
could, I suppose. I don't know why you would need to, because even at 1 million, so that's the thing that's interesting. Final thoughts about the Eclipse. It starts really bright because you're looking at the sun. And then as the moon comes and shades it, it gets darker and darker and darker. And so you have to change your exposure as it's going.
Yes.
And depending on your final goal, what your intent is. So they're at, I want to say they have a nice little chart you can look at, and there's some recommended settings. So basically by the time the moon is eclipsing the sun, the actual eclipse, not like your shot where it was kind of half.
Yeah.
But the full eclipse, I think if at ND 1 million, even at ISO 100, if you're shooting at f8, I think your shutter is like 1/8, like an eighth. Like
Nice.
pretty slow.
Well, because in my mind, I'm immediately thinking, I'm like, what if you did a long exposure of an eclipse?
Yeah.
Like, is that possible? Obviously, the eclipse would be completely destroyed, but like everything else in the world, it's like, I wonder what that would look like.
Because obviously when you're doing a photo of the eclipse, I think the general intent would be increase shutter speed, freeze motion, lock it in. But then I was thinking, well, if I had a strong enough ND, would I see some rays, some flaring? What would that look like?
Well, our favorite company, Slick, the tripod company, they make a device that like tracks like the moon, for instance. I wonder, I don't know if it's the same for the sun. So theoretically, like you could track the eclipse. Would that be something that you would need for what you want to do? As far as like, because like you're talking about shutter speed and like, it's like, well, like you could realistically adjust your shutter if you had a device that tracked it real time.
Yes.
So
I don't know yet. I have to do it and do it because this happens almost all the time. You do something once and then you realize, oh, I should have done this instead.
because even the moon, it's because it's moving, you kind of do have to play with your shutter enough to get like a decent quality shot of the moon.
If you're trying to freeze the motion.
Yes, yeah. If you're trying to get a detailed shot, I guess, of the moon, because yeah, at a certain point, it's all smudgy.
It moves pretty quick. So I don't know. Gotta experiment. Gotta see how it goes to know what I want to do next time. Because we'll have filters that I really don't know what I'll use. Just like those glasses. So these glasses, okay, they're good for looking at the sun. What else are they good for? Let's say you've got ND 1 million. It's good for the sun. What else are you going to use
welding?
it for?
How bright is that? Like, what's a welding mask? Is that 1 million?
Oh, welding glass? I don't know. I don't know what the ND equivalent would be.
Yeah, it's like, can you even, like, is welding as bright as the sun? Or how,
That's probably what it's... It probably is pretty bright. And there's certain things you could... I'm trying to think if there's any interesting thing you could do with lightning. Is there any interesting thing you could do with other really bright things?
like recording, filming lightning, as opposed to just a photo.
Well, typically with lightning, you want a slower shutter. So you don't need...
to catch it.
Right. So that was the trick. Gosh, years ago, I was doing a lot of that, where you'd have the longer exposure because lightning is almost like a strobe.
It might be interesting to see what color lightning is. Maybe that would help, because otherwise it's just like blinding white, right?
The lightning itself, yeah.
So it's kind of funny that your kids would put on the glasses and be like, "What's that yellow thing?"
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, well, that's the sun. But
I've never seen it that way.
If you looked at the sun, it's like, no, that's white.
It's white, yeah.
But obviously, a lot of people like
What color is
the
lightning?
interpretation of the sun is yellow. Obviously, it's probably because sunsets are majority like yellow by the time it gets down.
Yeah, if you're picking a crayon out of a crayon box to color the sun.
It's not going to be white. It's a blinding white.
Teacher, I can't draw a picture of the sun. It's white.
Yeah. What's funny? Yeah, why do people make the sun yellow midday? That's not what color the sun is.
I don't know. It's yellow, I guess. Big ball of burning gas. So I don't know. I think having these things and trying and experimenting always unlocks those future ideas. Like you're talking about getting a slick tracker to, well, what can we do with that? Oh, what can we do with lightning? What can we do with welding?
I think that's the problem with photography and cinematography.
Never
like,
ending.
you can always do something different. The same result, similar result, and there's so many ways to get there.
And you see what other people do, and then you say, what could I do different? What can my own spin be on it?
Yeah.
Because your Eclipse shot, I like that it's half and half.
Yeah.
It's not the ring, which you see a lot of people do. You're like, nah,
Not going for that.
not going for that. All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. I don't know if there's any other final thoughts you want to share,
For the Eclipse,
or just in general. We're talking about the HVX 200, talking about GH1, talking about film school.
well, just the never ending of gear. Like even this morning, you were messing with your rig again, trying to figure out the perfect solution. But I think that's a whole nother video. That's a whole another conversation.
DTAP, man. Oof.
Yeah, DTAP it's great, but the way you were talking about how that battery is designed, where it's like the direction of the DTAP just completely ruins what you had going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then you wonder who it's for and what they're...
right,
Why you would want it that way.
Somebody made it that way for a reason, but I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Because some Sonys don't even have shutter angles. So
Yeah,
who
there's
knows?
always future perfections. You can make optimizations. You get something working, and then you have to change a piece, and then, oh, now I got to update it and fix it. But that USB PD does work.
Yeah, the USB PD, that was interesting. So
It does work
converting
well.
the voltage of the battery, because the battery pack outputs 12 volts,
15,
you were
I
saying,
believe.
15, but you need it down to about 9 before you can actually use USB-C
Safely.
safely. Yeah, so it doesn't fry anything.
What was that years ago? We were talking about something. There's like the little gotchas. Certainly with HMI lights, it's
Oh
like,
my
don't
God,
touch the
yeah.
bulb. Oh, once you turn it off, you got to wait
Let
a
it
little.
cool.
You know, you got to
Yeah.
all these little things you can and can't do. Which I don't know, a light switch. People
Well-
just flip them on and off all the time.
Some people, if a light gets really hot, the glass, you do not want to touch it with your skin because the oils on your skin, like that can make the bulb burst. So
Correct.
there are certain things, yes, that I guess not a lot of people necessarily have to think about because now we have LED for most things. But
The things that are easy to do, easy mistakes, where I feel like certain things, plugging things in or ejecting things, you got to be kind of careful. Otherwise, you can really mess up whatever it is. I'm trying to think
I
of the
can't tell
example
you how
where
many people I've seen just pull out SD cards without properly ejecting, which
from a computer.
I've never had an SD card malfunction.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood, I guess. But like so many people just you rip them right out of their computer or whatever.
Yeah, pulling the hard drive.
All right, I guess
Don't
you can do
eject
that.
it. Ugh, it makes
Yeah.
me.
Then you just have
It's
those
not right.
notifications.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
there's something that in the past where if you plugged it in, it would basically fry whatever it was. I think it was. There's certain situations where you don't want to do that with
Your memory card?
FireWire or USB. Something in the past where if you kind of like hot swapped it or hot plugged it, it would mess things up. I don't remember what it was. Maybe a hard drive.
A floppy disk for sure. Rip it out.
But yeah, be careful with any kind of electricity because you can fry
that's
things
good
pretty
advice.
quick. Using the wrong electrical wiring, you can start fires that way. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, they did say that about computers because a lot of people didn't necessarily know that there was certain wattage for their laptop chargers, for instance. So like a 13-inch versus a 15 and a 17. Maybe more predominantly with like MacBooks back in the day. But a lot of people would get, like that's why a lot of those have different charging shapes now because they used to have like the same charging kind of connector and people used to just get different chargers but not realizing that if they had a 85 watt versus a 65 like they could ruin their battery. So
Yeah, and that's the issue now that everything's become USB-C. It's the universal standard. But if you don't know, you're going to use USB-C cable and it's not going to be enough. Oh, you need this other USB-C cable that's PD, power delivery, and that's the right one. And you go, okay, well, make sure I get the right thing. And then, but don't plug it into the other. It's got to have the right adapter box. It's got to be built the right way.
And, well, it's kind of funny how we both came to the same conclusion at a similar time because I was working on something completely different. I've like this charging station for my Sony batteries, like the I don't know, NP100s or 1000s or something, like the Sony A7S III batteries. And it was a docking bay of like 4 batteries could go in there. And there's power supply on the back for USB-C, but also like a DC kind of
12 volt.
a 12 volt. And with the USB-C, it's like what you were talking about has to be a certain voltage. So I had just assumed I was like, oh yeah, I have this this outlet that I can easily plug in, and I did that USB-C to USB-C, but nothing happened. And then of course I'm like, well, why isn't this working? So then I had to do the research, and I figured out that it doesn't output the correct power. So I was like, man. So I had to order something else to make it work, but I had no idea. Didn't even think about it.
I had another similar scenario that happened. So there's the kind of squid cables where you have 3 USB-Cs, and I plug 3 things in to charge them up USB-C. Okay, cool. Well, it turns out only 2 of the squid tentacles were for power. The other one was for data.
Yep.
So it wasn't charging the thing I had plugged in. And I went over and I looked at it and go, why isn't that one charging? And it's a cable. The only difference was the little icon on the connector that
I was
had
just
power.
Gonna say, I was like,
Just check that.
Yeah.
So you might, it fits. It looks like it's doing the right thing. And nope, sure enough, another gotcha. And that'll get you in trouble if you're trying to charge batteries for a shoot, trying to charge up mic packs, trying to charge cameras for a shoot.
Yep.
Oh, it's been charging all night. Should be good to go. Nope.
Yeah, that's I would say spend the time to do good amount of research on like your station for charging, because like it's kind of funny. Like when you first get a camera, obviously you get the one charger for your one battery, but I don't know, depending on your situation. I like a lot of individual batteries, but I've invested in like these bays, to charge multiple in, because I just don't like having a whole bunch of small chargers and just packing them up and everything.
No.
That gets really annoying. But But yeah, definitely invest in your power supply. You've gone a different route in investing in one much larger battery,
Still needs to be charged though.
but it still needs to be charged. And yeah, you were talking about getting like the squid tentacle thing, which is like a USB to USB-Cs. And I think I've found one that's 4, because I think you started with a 3, and I was like, that's a good idea. So then I was looking online and I found one that had 4.
Now I'm gonna go get a 5.
Yeah, which funny because the 4 has the one that does data, so it really only has 3.
Yeah,
But you know, that's what I needed at the time because I had the Comica mic packs. And
Comica. I just found out it's Comica. Yes,
I thought Comica doesn't it have a little thing on the eye?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
Maybe it does.
That's why
So I looked this up because we've always said
I'm looking
Comica.
this up right now. I've always
And then
said
I saw one of
Comica.
their videos where they're like, or no, yeah, that's what we say. Now I'm getting myself confused. Comica?
I'm going
Comica. I thought it was
to
funny
the
that it was
website
the word comic was in their name. Comica. But
guess
Comica? Comica?
Comica.
Comica. Comica is how they say it, I'm pretty sure, in their videos.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of that because the C
Has
that little. So that's, I guess, subconsciously I was like, Comica.
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 Comica. Anyway, you were saying something about those mics?
No, just that they're USB-C, and there's 3 of them, the 2 mics and the transmitter, so I needed something that had 3, and I was like, well, so now I have one that has 3, but it has 4 split things. But
Just be careful.
either way.
Always little things will get you. So hopefully this Eclipse goes well.